and lucky enough we started to stabilise them. Dave Williams and myself, Dave Williams was good coach, really was, and real good help to me. And brought in Mike Walker from Colchester as a coach for the reserve team. We had Keith Webb, who was there already, took the youth team. So we had a team off the pitch, and we got it organised that and everybody knew the job, knew what they were supposed to do, and give them the responsibility to that. And we started to turn things around gradually. And at Christmas time, we had 3 games at Christmas at those days, and we won 3 games in a row, which gave us that little bit of a boost to get us out of the bottom 3, and or bottom 2, I think it was then, and started a bit of momentum going forward. And we ended up middle table end of the season, which, and I think a few months before that, they offered me the job and gave me the job full time. And the following season, we started the season and were able to bring players in who we thought would do us some good, where we thought the gaps were. And we ended up that season 4th in the table, and we'd gone the whole season practically up to Easter, top of the first division as it was at that time. And we were getting results. Robert Fleck and people like that had brought in, Andy Townsend, Ian Crook, all those players were playing brilliantly. And we ended up 4th, which would have qualified us for Europe at that time, had it not been for the high school tragedy where they banned the teams from Europe. And that would have meant we were in. And also that season we got to the semi-final of the FA Cup in the same season, and lost unfortunately in the semi-final to Everton, which was the other game to the Hillsborough disaster at the other side. And on that day, of course, the Everton fans, as you will know, in Liverpool, you'll have families that they'll be divided by Liverpool-Everton supporters, and some of the Everton supporters had people at the game who they were obviously concerned, and that took the whole, disappointment away of losing, because there's other things going on that were much more important. And it was a terrible event to happen.
So how did you manage that? I mean, you moved from, I don't think I'm quite ready to be a manager, to do it part-time, to suddenly I'm massively successful.
Well, this was what was, it was something that was, the decision was made for me in lots of ways. I was there, the offer was there, and I thought to myself, I couldn't turn this down, because I look back and think, no, I should have done that. So I'd have never forgiven myself in not having a go. But I knew I had some good people around me, which was necessary for any manager. You need people around you to do well. And I did have that in Dave Williams. He was a good coach, very good coach. And I'm a believer in allowing people to have their jobs and have a little bit of esteem in the jobs. If a coach is there, he coaches. If a manager is there, he manages. He allows the people to do their jobs and have an input. They feel their worth then when they're doing something. And I think that's what happened. And they all did very, very well at the jobs and contributed. But for me, it was a real jump of into the dark, because I didn't really know, oh, excuse me a sec, that...
no worries, we can edit things out, no worries.
Okay, it's alright, it's a timer for my, I've got my drops in.
Oh, gosh, yes. No worries.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Good.
Where was I?
Yeah, just when the time's right, as you say, you've
right.
got to take the chance.
I'd take the chance. I thought, I'd never forgive myself if I didn't take the chance. And I did it with a lot of trepidation because of this position we were in. I knew it was going to be a hell of a job. The directors and board needed to know what was needed to get us out of the position, and we had these clandestine meetings at hotels, and asked me what would be necessary, and I obviously said, we'll need a couple of players. Because at that time, Steve Bruce was already on the move, really. Man United had already informed him that they wanted him, he wanted to go, and we had to sell Steve Bruce, who was a top centre half, and I had to fill a position there. And unfortunately, we got John O'Neill from Queen's Park Rangers. His first game, he was injured by John Fashanu, who was an ex-Norwich player. and it completely shattered his ligaments in his knee, and that was his first game out, gone. Robert Fleck, who I got from Scotland, came in, he played. He was injured in that game as well, so I lost the 2 players that I brought in immediately. But we managed to get by, and they came back and were a good, hell of a success for us.
I was going to mention Robert Fleck actually, because he came to Norwich presumably as a relative unknown, and he left as a hero.
Well, this was the question I was asked when I went before the board. I sat in front of these guys who said, what do we need? And who do we need to go for? And he was one that I'd seen, not personally seen, I'd heard of and heard reputation and seen him play for Glasgow Rangers, and he looked really a bright player. And I thought, all right, I'll throw his name in the hat. We went up to with the chairman up to Scotland to see Graham Souness, and we bought him for 380,000, I think it was at the time, and brought him back on the plane, introduced him to the players. When he went into a training session, it was like, a real lift to the session, because the players who were there wanted to show him what good players they were, and he was a good player. He was zipping about there, and he had didn't have any baggage that we had in the players of the results that had gone before, so he played with a lot of freedom, and I think that helped the players that were there. He was a great player to have around. He was a fighter, he wanted to win, he could score goals, he was quick, he could hit balls from outside the box, hit the back of the net, and I think that lifted the whole situation, the whole crowd.
That's something we hear about. We hear about players, managers describing players as good for the dressing room. Lifts the entire team. Absolutely. How can one player change so much?
Just his attitude in terms of, I suppose you'll know in any workplace, you'll get a fellow who's got, he's more vociferous than most, but he'll be the centre of everything. And because he's got an opinion, I like a player who's got an opinion. If he gives me an argument, at least, it'll stir the rest of them up, to feel that they're able to do that and able to express themselves. And I think he more than expressed himself when he was in the dressing room. He's great. He would half time he'd come in and he'd lather it up, and he'd take his shirt off, his shorts be off, he'd sit on the floor. And if you say something, he'd say, I don't agree with that. And of course the dressing room's off then. They'd all have a contribution, and then it gets and all the rest of us start sitting up. Well, that in itself gets the adrenaline flowing and the spark in the dressing room, and they were really, he was good for that. He was good for that.
And you've got every player thinking as to how they can improve the team, what's happening.
Yeah, that's right. When you got, in training, you have to make it interesting, but you have to make it pertinent to what you're doing on the Saturday. And this is, Dave was good at that. We, had organised the side in terms of fitness and their skills. We'd work on everything, and then gradually work to the end of the week on the particular team that we were going to play on a Saturday or midweek. And it worked, and the momentum was there, and I think the crowd too, when they saw success, they start going with it as well. And the same thing can happen the other way. The snowball can go downhill, and it can get bigger and bigger, and the problems get bigger and bigger. You've got to reverse that.
Now tell us this, we often hear from managers that in some cases you treat a player by putting your arm on his shoulder, in another you give him a rollicking. How do you learn this about people? Is it something that you've got, that you get intuitively, you learn, you know about people, or do you look at someone and say, you're the sort of guy who's going to cause trouble?
Well, you do, because you yourself will probably know, in any group of people you look at them, you start to analyse each one of them and how you can approach them.
That's right.
But, some people do it naturally. You talk to people, you respect them. If you respect them, you respect back. And you get it. You'll get an argument sometimes. Nobody goes through life without having some bust-ups or ups and downs. This happens. But you don't let it affect you in terms of what your team is going to be on a Saturday. You allow somebody to have an opinion. You may not agree with it, but you respect it and you get on with it.
So is that how you do it? I mean, in terms of, there will be players that you have respect for as a player, but as a person you may not. you might actually not like them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But if they're good for the team, does that take precedence?
You say you wouldn't be someone you'd take home to see your family, and
Yes.
you know, that could happen. Perhaps I was lucky enough to have a good group of players. You know, you not all of them you want as a son-in-law, but you'd want, you know, as a friend maybe, you know.
Yeah.
And you find that out after years later that the respect is still there, you know, and you talk to them as a friend, as a person and a colleague that you've worked with. And I don't think there's many that I've fallen out with over the years. I suppose that's my temperament as well, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
What's your best signing?
Oh, boy. You know, you've got several. If I can go through
of
them,
course you can.
You've got Andy Linnigan,
Yes.
Andy Townsend,
Yep.
Robert Fleck,
Yep.
Cool, let's go on. I think they're about, you know, the
That's
three
a pretty
good
good
ones.
group.
David, I'm trying to forget his surname now. Gone. And every player that I mean, Malcolm Allen, he did a great job for us. Scored goals, you know, came on as sub. Didn't have a permanent position on the side sometimes, and of course he was unhappy with that, and we had our differences, I suppose, but he was a lovely fellow, and always, you know, he was good in the dressing room, as you say. He was a joker, and he would take everything, and he was very professional when he played, you know.
Tell us about a young fellow who played for you, Dion Dublin.
Dion, yeah, well, this was probably the one that got away from me, because again, I'm looking at Dale Gordon, another player, as a youngster who came into the game from Great Yarmouth and went through to the first team. Excellent player. Came to me one day and said, I've got a friend who's just been released by Leicester, would you give him a trial? I think it was Leicester he was at originally. And he said, I said, yeah, bring him up, let's have a look. And he brought him into the club, and good player, played in reserve several times, and he was keen obviously to sign as professional for us. And although he was a decent player at that time, I had a lot of good players in the squad, and I had a budget to work. The unfortunate thing, I couldn't, if I took him on, maybe that would have stopped me bringing someone into the top end, which I might have needed to get us to the position we wanted to be. So I had a decision to make, and unfortunately for me, he went away and went to Cambridge, and fortunately for him, he did ever so well, and I was really pleased to see him do that, you know, regardless of what, you know, what might have been for us at the time. And he had a very successful time going from Cambridge to Man United. And in fact, I went when Chris Sutton was being sold from Norwich, we went to Man United, and I went with the chairman, I wasn't manager at the time, and they offered us Dion Dublin back as part of the deal, but Dion had a broken leg at that time and hadn't healed, so that was really what we couldn't take. But I would eventually he got back to Norwich, didn't he? And played a tremendous part in their fortunes at the time. Good player, really good player.
Thanks very much for that one, we appreciate it.
I'm glad you do. £1 million.
I know. And he moved on for several teams.
He did, yeah, terrific. Now he's on the television and doing very well.
He's doing very well for himself.
It's good. It's good to see.
Under that hammer, I think.
It's good to see.
It's good. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Is this something that follows through with football players, that sometimes the personality they've got is reflected in their play, and they could have been a success in almost any public.
Yeah,
I mean, if they're physical.
I think it's a great indicator of how a person is in the way that they perform on the pitch. It very often reflects what they're like as a person. You know, you get the steady ones, you know that they're going to be steady, and they're going to be steady in life. If you like, that's their nature. And I think with flamboyant ones, you get, I mean, Robert, for instance, he was all over the place, and he was all over the place when he's outside the game. But terrific fella to have around, and really, we had a, you know, I really liked him. I think he was a terrific lad. He was a bit of a scallywag, but you know, I liked that, and that was what made him what he is. And he played as he is outside. You know, he'd get the crowd on his side. He'd you know, he'd have a go at the biggest fella on the pitch. He wouldn't have it wouldn't worry him. I remember Razor Ruddock playing against him in one of the. We played a semi-final at quarter-finals at Carrow Road, and he actually broke Robert's ribs before the semi-final. It was a quarter-final game. He actually upped him. He went right up in the air, landed on the track, and really, broke his rib. And he was. We put him in a hyperbaric machine. He was ready for the semi-final, which unfortunately we didn't win again. It was 2 semi-finals. Yeah, it was. But good times.
Fantastic.
Good times.
Okay, so who do you keep in contact with from your teams? Do you keep in contact with many? I mean, we spoke this morning, and we know that sometimes when someone's ill, that brings folk out of the woodwork and that sort of thing. And you forget friends that you've had.
Yeah, well, Sammy, obviously living in the area, because I worked with Sammy, I went on, I forgot to say that, I went on to work in the academies after I finished as manager. And actually, the training ground at Norwich, that was the first thing I oversaw and did when I resigned as manager. Sammy reckons I was sacked. I told him I was resigned. But we got the job of doing that, which was interesting for a while, and then we started the academies, and Sammy, we linked up together doing that after playing at Cambridge. Because I used to stay with Sammy when we used to go away from home, and Sammy's, we used to stay in his flat, and that was right by a railway line. He said, if you want a cup of tea in the morning, he said, just put your hand out the window, the cafeteria can't come fast. So I mean, he's full of it, and at night he would say, "What do you want a nightcap?" Because I used to eat a lot of fisherman friends, to keep. And his wife, they said, "We'd like supper." I said, "Right, fine, we'll give you a sandwich." He gave me this sandwich, and I went to buy it. It was full of fisherman's friends inside. I'll tell you what, he was up to everything. And I was laying in bed, and that was Peter Reeve. He was the physio at the time. And staying there as well. We stayed in his lounge. We got this bed set up, Union Jack on the bed, laying there, and I'm going to sleep. And I heard the national anthem, and I thought, what's it? And they got me, and they lifted the end of the bed, and I'm going out the window. I'm being buried at sea. He's full of it. He was really good. We had some good times.
But you need characters.
Absolutely. Sammy was a character, all right. He's always getting into trouble. He knows getting me into trouble as well.
He did say to ask you where you kept your change.
Oh, no, we told him that one.
We'll keep that for another day.
Yeah, that's right. But, he had his ups and downs. He didn't get on with John Doherty, certainly probably told me that. And I've been injured. I got a hamstring injury, and I wasn't playing in the first team. He was supposed to be playing the first team at the Abbey, and I was playing down the road, somewhere like Bury or somewhere like that, to get fitness, coming back with a second team. And I'm playing away, and I'm at centre back. I'm playing. I looked at the end of the pitch, and I see Sammy walking at the. I thought he was playing this afternoon. He'd only had a row, hadn't he? And walked out. He said, "I'm not going to play in this sort of." So that ended his time at the Abbey, and he went to Holland after that.
He did, and I know you spent some time in Holland.
Yeah, he did. He had a good career.
He did.
Yeah.
And a great time for Dutch football as well.
Yes.
Of course, mid-70s.
Yeah, it was. But I played against Sammy, because Villa, we played Villa in the League Cup, and Sammy unfortunately didn't play. Well, fortunately for me, he didn't play, because I know he'd have probably leathered me that day, but they had big Leonard and Little up front, I think, at that time, Villa, and Sammy had been injured or whatever, but I know Sammy was a hard player to play against. But I played for Sammy when I was at Norwich, the Galston, where we started. He managed Galston.
Yes, he did.
And he said, he asked me, we had a director who was actually the chairman of Galston as well, asked me if I'd like to play one game for him in the local game against Lowestoft. And I played for Sammy that night, so he said, Sammy's managed me at one time. I thought, he's got me into some trouble. I wonder what I'm going against him now. Yeah.
So he said that, in his opinion, that George Best was the best player there ever was.
Yeah, good player.
Did you ever play against him?
Yes, I did, yeah.
How did you find that?
Well, we beat him. We played in 1967, we talked about, and that was when they just won the European Cup. Norwich drew Man United at Man United, and you can remember we were just having something like, at that time we were getting 12,000 crowds, not very big crowds, and we went there and we played, and there were more in the ground in the warm-up than there were ever at Norwich, and there were 63,000 people there at the ground, and it was, the forward line was Best, Charlton, Law, Hurd and Aston. And Styles, Crerand, I sort of think that, and the rest of the team,
Yeah, I'm sure for that.
But we scored a goal in the first half against the run of play. Of course, we were backs to the wall. We were playing, you know, withdrawn defence in those days. We were just putting a wall up. We couldn't stop. And we scored a breakaway goal, which put us to 1-0 lead. And then Dennis Law, terrific. He was my best player. I like Dennis Law. I thought he was a great player. Played a ball out to the wide, and he was, I've never seen like it. He's in at the near post. This was from the halfway line he played the ball. He was in at the near post. A ball had come over on the volley, and had gone past the goal, and instead of hitting with this leg, he did his left foot in the air, volley, top corner. I just, amazement, you know. And we went through the game, backs to the wall, and we scored a goal through a back pass that was passed past the keeper, and Gordon Pollard was running on, and he opened net like that and put it in, and we had to play the rest of the game out, backs to the wall to try and keep him out, and our goalkeeper, Kevin Keelan, well, he made so many saves, it was untrue. And we managed to get a win, but the good thing about Man United was, when we stopped for a meal on the way back, Matt Busby sent us champagne and said, well done. What a terrific gesture, yeah. And that could have been, you know, they could have said, you know, lucky and all this, but no, they just left it at that.
Somebody mentioned Louis Van Gaal to us.
Yes, he was playing with him.
Did you ever have that?
No. I mean, he played it with him, didn't he, Sammy, over there? Yeah, he's telling me about it.
Because the criticism he gave the Cambridge United pitch, which is the best pitch in, probably the best pitch outside the Championship.
Yeah, it was always a good picture, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a good service,
It was unreal after the 0-0 draw.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Any questions, Al?
I always ask people, did you come across any characters in your career, and any funny stories
that not mentioned?
I'm sure there's quite a few.
Well, comes characters. I suppose. Yeah, there are many in terms of veteran characters, but I can't think of any that come to mind in. I mean, Sammy took some beating. I've got to say, he was always in the hub of things. You know, if there's something going on, Sammy was there. He'd always be in the middle of it. Yes, Malcolm Allen. Who I managed. He was quite a character. The sort of thing he would do, where the training ground used to be at Norwich, the old training ground, wasn't far from the ground, and the players had to go up to the ground sometimes, and they used to go up this hill which went up to some traffic lights and turn right towards the ground. He would get in the line of traffic, and all of a sudden he'd get out of his car, lift the bonnet up, and then keep looking in the bonnet, and there'd be a line of traffic going all the way down to the road, and he'd just keep going. This, you know, vision of the sun on the car, I can't help it. And everybody's out of the car and they're wondering what's going on. Then all of a sudden he put the bonnet down, get in his car and drive off and leave them there. And other things he used to do, he used to go in a supermarket, and if there was boxes, they told me about this, most of the lads, but I've never seen. He'd walk through the supermarket, he used to keep the boxes, didn't he, for people who wanted to take the groceries. He'd throw himself in these boxes on the floor and ruffle about in them. I thought, you know, people have thought, what's going on, you know, and he just got up and walk away, you know. He was just a character, you know. He was good for team morale and that sort of thing. They liked somebody who'd, you know, a bit of a clown at times. But I suppose a lot of them, you know, played little tricks here and there. You know, we had people that, you know, in the old days used to smoke. And one particular player, Joe Mullet, he never used to buy cigarettes for himself. He always used to catch a cigarette off other people. and they got wise to this, so they were going to the pitches which you used to do when you went away from home on a Friday night if you're playing away from home, and we go to the pitches. And one of the lads had got these cigarettes, and he put one of those pellets inside with the cigarettes that actually, flamed up when he. And of course, when they asked for a cigarette, they ran around. Joe was there, and they pushed that one forward, and he took that one, and it was dark in the cinema. And he lit this fag, and the whole cinema lit up, and he was still there. And they just cracked up and fell about. But little things like that. That was good. That was good.
What's your involvement today then in football? What do you keep doing?
I'm still doing hosting at the ground, which is hosting business groups. We have several different packages that people buy. You get the match sponsors, program sponsors. We've got a place up there called the Legends, which is two of us go in there and the people dine there, and we sit with them and host a table, this sort of thing. And if there's anybody that needs to be interviewed, sometimes we interview them, or the interview a player that is not involved with the game, so that gives them a little bit of entertainment before the game. The game has changed completely in that respect. The entertainment before and the hosting of just Norwich being, I suppose, Dealey Smith being, the main one of the main directors and owners, had their brand name all over everything, and the amount of places you can eat and restaurants at the ground now is far in excess of what we used to when we were first started. I can remember, we only had one main stand and 3 was terraced and just covered, but now it's fully covered. There's rooms everywhere, dining rooms and kitchens and people, which has to be furnished through the week as well.
The old main stand burnt down as well, didn't it?
It did, yeah. That was quite. The story was that the groundsman at that time, he was a bit of a character. Russell Allison, lovely fella. He used to keep the ground as in those days didn't have the machinery and things that they've got now. And the rumour was that the reason it burnt down is he put a 6-inch nail in the fuse box to keep it up. But that was only a rumour. I'm not that podcast aspersions on what I think. But that was out of action for quite a while, and that's the first new stand that they built after that one, burned and collapsed. But I've seen the ground develop from, as it is now, from scratch really. All those years that I've been there, I've seen everything. I know my way around everywhere, all the nooks and crannies, and it's quite nice to see and be part of a football club that's done that. And the same thing has happened to Cambridge United. They've got a new stand and everything. One of the games there, it reminds me, we played Chelsea in the cup, and imagine the amount of people that wanted to get into the Abbey Stadium, and they had that end which was open, that backed on the allotments, didn't it? Yeah. And the funny thing through the game was, we were playing away and the ball went over the allotments at the back, and someone threw a cabbage bag. And that was, the sort of things that happened in those days. Crowd invaded the pitch, and it was great times.
Good times.
Dave Stringers, I think this has been the easiest interview we've ever conducted. And we've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.